Hi, I'm Eliot Rosenstock, a psychotherapist and Zer0 Books author, and today we're going to talk about Mari Kondo's Kawaii superego injunction to enjoy. Ego, the superego, and the id, you may have heard of the Freudian sort of triad. The id, the silent drive that sort of perpetuates things, and the ego, which is the self-identity, and then the superego, which mediates the two to some degree, but also gives commands. It gives demands on the ego. It gives demands on the sort of ship, the ship that is the person. The way Fox News reviewed the show is basically, they just summed up the rules. So they said, 1, commit yourself to tidying up. 2, imagine your ideal lifestyle. 3, finish discarding first. 4, tidy by category, not location. 5, follow the right order. And last but not least, ask yourself if it sparks joy. That's just sort of straightforwardly engaging with the ideological apparatus of capital. So I think if you're sort of you're sort of still into electoral politics, and it's hard not to be, keep this in mind, that people that sell themselves as the left wing of capital can be very dangerous, more so than neoconservatives who are straightforward about capitalism, because they're co-opting fights, creating false enemies, and removing the chance of engaging with an actual oppressor. And they're pushing people to the right, because at least the right, they're like straightforward, when not always, but they're straightforwardly engaging with populist reaction. They're like, well, I don't like this, but I guess I would rather have this than than what's fundamentally a lie. Another interesting thing outside of her method is this idea of somebody coming into the household and rearranging the power structure of the household, because it allows for a nice vessel for a ressentiment, as described by Nietzsche, the impotent, sort of resentful state of being, to then sort of come forth through this new morality. And you'll see, if you watch the show, households that have a lot of one family member's things, or have something that's important to one family member, will now get sort of put to the side in favor of this other family members, who their sort of happiness and joy, or whatever you want to call it, then supersedes this other family member. So it's not as simple as one person picking up an object and deciding if it gives enjoyment. There's also this negation of the other person's joy. So even if you're going from the standard of joy and sparking joy, you're entering this system of a power differential, and the power differential isn't mediated by necessarily, here's this person who had less power in the family, and there's a tyrannical force, and here's the new power. It's a very much the capitalistic form, which is here's a way where I think the duty to enjoy is better expressed. Another thing is you sort of get into the bipolarity of capitalism, which is sort of an abstract concept, but with the idea of the object as something which is embodying the duty to enjoy, it creates the object as territory for the idea of that duty to enjoy. So with that duty to enjoy, if you have territory that's in and for the idea, which of joy, for instance, you're also confronted simultaneously by non-enjoyment. So you're constantly grappling between this swing of non-enjoyment and enjoying. So for instance, if you had fidelity to the idea of social use value, you'd have a very different relation between the objects in your household. You could even determine that maybe clutter, or something that has maybe a bit of an excess, is preferable, because as Marx says, quantity is its own quality. So if you have something that's dedicated to minimalism, but people don't like minimalism, it's not simply a neutral aspect of it. This rock kind of sparks joy, honestly. Like I'm like holding this rock. It has a nice texture to it, but I don't know if that means should I keep this rock? So I guess if I'm following the superego injunction to enjoy, I'm gonna keep this rock going. But one thing that's gonna happen, I think, is it's eventually going to not become this thing. It's going to be taken into a different register of social relations or material relations, and it's going to be fundamentally, it's going to have a different function. Marx was the one who said quantity is its own quality. So by getting rid of objects, you're not simply removing the fluff and keeping, I guess, the real thing. You're also entering into this form of, I guess, genocidal clutter fascism. I guess would be the stupid way to say it. But no, you're entering into a form of utility, of use value. So if everything that you're engaging with has to do with its use value, and then secondly, you have to sort of have the idea that you're really enjoying its use value. So it can't just have use value. It can't just be like, say, a car engine. It would have to be something pretty much useless if you're getting rid of everything around you. Immediate sort of notional, fleeting enjoyment. Creating a system where you're surrounded by these types of objects. If you're not sort of sold, I guess, on leftism and you're sort of a Democrat, I think that's an important audience to address. And you might be angry at people who are Marxists or like Bernie or bust kind of people. And you might think, just support the Democrats because it's always better than Trump, right? It's always better than the neoconservative, bad guy or whatever. But the problem with that is not only is the left wing of capital or the left wing of capital, not only are they sort of having a take that is pro-capitalism, but they're purposely obscuring the way people are selling themselves, and they're using the rhetoric of anti-racism, and they're using it in a way which makes it effectively a lie. So you're creating the fight against racism into something that's a pitch for capitalism, but you're also making the fight against racism effectively a lie. So here's what I'm talking about. So I'll read from the New Yorker article, Kondo as the organizational consultant as a freelance exorcist. So New Yorker writer Troy Patterson. There is perhaps a smidgen of Orientalism in the series framing of its Japanese star as a sprite who flutters efficiently across a non-specific USA, gracing its chaotic households with wisdom. Perhaps she's not a capital other, like just otherworldly in the manner of a fairy godmother or enchanted nanny. Her entire pitch of herself is utilizing her cultural identity as a way to sell, herself as an object or a commodity. So when you get the left wing of capital creating a non-specific other, which is exploiting her, you're not just being a reactionary, like a straightforward reactionary. You're taking the entire fight against racism and you're making it effectively a lie. My urge is to do this. It's just to like toss this rock. I don't want to necessarily keep this rock. I just kind of want to toss it. That sort of was nice. So sometimes you can throw away what sparks joy, and it's part of the process. And now I'm freed up to do something productive, like, I don't know, get lunch or something, go for a walk. Yeah, let's do that. Cut.